as we usually are, as we're wont to be, and we're in the closet, as we should be for the kind of story we're talking about. That we're talking about a gay story. Oh, not that gay kind. We're continuing to talk about the gay story. Hey, hi everyone. It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil, I'm up to you. Man, this story is it just keeps. I think we need to keep repeating this story uh, on Claudine Gay because just so that we know what it's about. Because now we hear Claudine Gay's side. It's come out, the New York Times op-ed. And, of course, you have the conservatives saying, hey, we won, we beat her. Now we're going to go after the MIT person. We got the Penn person, the Harvard person, and we're going to keep going. And this is all the conservatives, both the donors and the journalist researchers, the Oppo research folks who are trying to, just apply the plagiarism software on all the works that Claudine Gay ever put out. That apparently was one of the things on Monday, or rather Tuesday, that came out that forced her to come forward and say, look, I'm resigning. But she came out with her op-ed. I just want to point out that my op-ed came out yesterday as well on the ALDEF blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. Check it out there, aldef.org/blog. Also, it's out on diverse issues in higher education, a different draft. Another one published in journalisms. Richard Prince's journalism digital publication, which talks about people of color, journalism, NABJ, NAHJ, AAJ, all the JAs. He's got a great blog, Journalisms, and he put it up. Now, Richard is a copy editor, without peer, right? And he said, I'm publishing this, but I want you to know, when you say milk toast, it's not milk toast. It's not two words. It's not even just one word. It's milk, MILQE, toast, TOAST, one word. And of course I knew it was Casper milk toast. I knew that, but I wrote it out, milk and toast. Chalk it up to deadline pressure. I don't know. Chalk it up to like the demographics of the people who read me or who know who I am. You got to be old to know who I am. Anyway, so Richard had to point out that, Emil, it's milk toast, MILQUE, not milk toast, something that you could try at home if you have the milk and the toast. I have almond milk. I guess it would work there. I have oat milk. I guess it might work there. Toast, I have toast, but I like toast the regular way without milk. We made the correction because I could not defend it, saying in the style book, we have the modern version of milk toast, which is milk toast, two words, and not a proper, it was referred to a character, so it should be a proper noun, right? And should be capitalized. But anyway, those copy editors. And he pointed out one other thing. Anyway, you can catch my take on the whole Claudine Gay thing that I wrote yesterday on the ALDEF blog, Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, AALDEF.org/blog, and then also diverse issues on higher education and on journalism is getting picked up because, not many people yesterday and the day of the actual event were calling it what it was, right? A lot of people were saying, oh, thank goodness, plagiarism. I think they got her out. And if you read my column on December 15th, I pretty much said what many people are now finally coming out and saying also, that, oh, this was never about equity. This was never about, or actually, this was never about anti-Semitism. It was never about, the congressional committee and missteps on what Harvard did or didn't do. It was never about that. This was solely about attacking our quote unquote woke universities overrun by liberalism. I was reading the New York Times and they had a letter from somebody. And, this is how people understand these things, right? That you got to go to these letters. It says, and Bret Stephens of the Times wrote a column that was critical of Gay. It said, oh, Bret Stephens' column is spot on about Claudine Gay and her very short tenure at Harvard. Like him, I believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts have run amok. Run amok. Boy, and then that struck right to the core of me, right? Because I'm Emil Amok. Here on Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. And then when I saw that, I said, no, that's running amok the other way. That shows that there can be equanimity when it comes to being amok. You could be like Bret Stephens running amok, or you could be like Claudine Gay running amok. Anyway, but this is a sentiment that I think most people came away from this, that Gay was appointed based mainly on her race and gender as evidenced by her very light resume. I mean, that's what people are saying. That's not true. And as I point out in my column yesterday, it was just what we were seeing was conservative affirmative action or white affirmative action as promoted by right-wing MAGA types who find that Donald Trump is very qualified to be president of the United States. Not just the second time, but the first time too. That was an example of affirmative action. Affirmative action has always been white affirmative action. And in my column yesterday, I just point out, hey, this is a matter. It wasn't about, as it wasn't about that congressional hearing. The congressional hearing was about trying to undo DEI efforts in higher ed. And as one of the conservative researchers said, after Gay resigned, they themselves said, hey, we got our scalp. So I just find it interesting that people, even after Claudine, I mean, you get the Claudine Gay's op-ed in a sec, but even after Claudine Gay's op-ed, they still believe that this is about, diversity, equity, and inclusion running amok. It's not. It's about the overreaction to it running amok the other way and trying to undo it unfairly by going after Claudine Gay and going after her with a racial animus that is really unforgivable. So, like I said, a lot of people are coming to the conclusion that, yeah, okay, this wasn't about that congressional hearing and anti-Semitism and fighting that. No, this is about undoing what the perception is about higher ed in the United States, that it's overrun by liberal thought and liberal activists and left-wing politics, progressive politics, and it's not. And you could even see it from Harvard's reaction. Harvard's reaction was not exactly, they stood by Gay. Not entirely, though. I mean, I still think that, I said this in my column, that for whatever reason, Harvard did not believe that Claudine Gay was a DEI hill to die on. But I believe it should have been. It should have been. And considering, all the SCOTUS stuff from, the Supreme Court undoing affirmative action, this is sort of like the undoing of affirmative action part 2. This is the sequel. And those who were not happy enough that they've pretty much neutered affirmative action, they wanted to go even further. And they saw this as an example to go after Claudine Gay. And so the perfect reaction to that conservative digging in to truly eradicate every last bit that they see cancerous in higher ed, the reaction would have been to stand tall and to fight. And neither Harvard nor Claudine Gay chose to. I mean, and that's why I think that, you can say Harvard's liberal and Harvard's, progressive and all. No, they approach this in a very conservative way. In the end, as I say in my column, they protected the brand. The corporations, the corporate board that oversees. I used to think, look, I'm an alum. What do I know? I used to think the overseers were the top board, but no, there's a board over the overseers, the Uberseers, the corporate board. There's like 13 of them. Thanks to the New York Times for exposing that. Well, it's not that it needs exposure. It's just that most people don't know. What is the corporation at Harvard? All the ex-presidents, more hedge fund, past and present hedge fund runners than I think is healthy for a, university. I was going to say a public university, but it's not. It's private. Hedge fund runners. And so, of course, it's all about the money. Or was it? I mean, that's another aspect of this. To what degree did the corporate donors like Bill Ackman have to do with this? Well, a lot, but would it have hurt Harvard? Would it have hurt Harvard with its $60 billion endowment? I mean, who better to stand up to the bullying of the right than Harvard? And as I point out, that it looks like because Harvard did not fight on, because of that, other schools can say, well, God, Harvard folded, and our endowment is like 1/100th of Harvard's, if that. It's a fraction. We can't fight this fight. And this is the bad precedent set by what happened this week. Now, I want to read what Claudine Gay said, because it's worth going over, because she didn't fight when she had to. She didn't fight on Tuesday when she issued the letter to the Harvard community acknowledging her intent to resign. But this is what she wrote, published in the New York Times. It's in print today. The headline is, "What just happened at Harvard is bigger than me." And it's true. It's bigger than, but beginning the fight with her would have sent a message. And instead it sends an opposite message. Not that the fight is bigger than one person, but it sends a message that institutions can be cowed, can be had, can be bullied. I just feel that Harvard should not have been bullied. into even accepting Claudine Gay's resignation. They should have said, in street parlance, they should have said, girlfriend, you're getting up there, you're standing tall. We got your back. But they didn't even say a formal version of that. So this is what Claudine Gay wrote. On Tuesday, I made the wrenching but necessary decision to resign as Harvard's president. For weeks, both I and the institution to which I've devoted my professional life have been under attack. It's true. They have been. My character and intelligence have been impugned. My commitment to fighting anti-Semitism has been questioned. I mean, she was late. She didn't really come back with fiery, passionate answers at that congressional hearing. It was all about, well, it depends. It's on the context. It reminds me of another Massachusetts question and answer that happened during a debate. Remember that presidential debate? Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis was running for president, and someone asked him a question about what he'd do if Kitty were raped, his wife. And he gave some kind of legal namby-pamby answer instead of, I tear that guy apart limb by limb. I just let that guy have it. I'd attack him. That's what people wanted to see. Instead, Michael Dukakis gave a kind of like a squirrely little answer, and people saw him as a milquetoast. And I think that's sort of in the same general area as Claudine Gay's response to Congress. She should have had a better answer. She acknowledges that. My inbox has been flooded with invective, including death threats, she continues to write. I've been called the N-word more times than I care to count. This is in the first graph. And she uses the euphemistic N-word. But we know, right? And we expect that because this really was about race. My hope is that by stepping down, I will deny demagogues the opportunity to further weaponize my presidency in their campaign, to undermine the ideals animating Harvard since its founding: excellence, openness, independence, truth. I guess all that encompasses veritas, right? The motto of Harvard. Here's the thing that she's wrong. Her stepping down does not deny demagogues the opportunity to further weaponize her presidency. Well, maybe not her specific presidency, but they're able to attack the very things that Harvard stands for, according to her graph: excellence, openness, independence, and truth. That's why I wish she stood up to the bullying and fought. Next graph. As I depart, I must offer a few words of warning. The campaign against me was about more than one university and one leader. Oh, yeah, well, she acknowledges, but she didn't fight for them. This was merely a single skirmish in a broader war to unravel public faith in pillars of American society. That is a good line, because that is what it is. People are trying to unravel public faith in pillars of American society. Some people may read my column and say, Emil, you talk too much about Trump. No, I don't. Because the people who are attacking Gay are amongst the most MAGA types out there, right-wing MAGA types. They see a problem with Gay, but see no problem with the twice impeached, 4-time indicted, 91 felony count fellow who wants to be president again. Something's wrong there. Back to Gay. Campaigns of this kind often start with attacks on education and expertise because these are the tools that best equip communities to see through propaganda. She doesn't mention this, but I guess this is why Pol Pot went after the intellectuals and the educators and the teachers, right? Talking about the Cambodian genocide, which is extreme, but that's what Pol Pot did. And that's sort of what this campaign here to go after education and expertise, because as Gay says, these are the tools that best equip communities to see through propaganda. Gay continues, but such campaigns don't end there. Trusted institutions of all types, from public health agencies to news organizations, will continue to fall victim to coordinated efforts to undermine their legitimacy and ruin their leaders' credibility. Well, that's true. For the opportunists driving cynicism about our institutions, no single victory or toppled leader exhausts their zeal. That's the point. That's why you fight. Because if you don't fight, you give them momentum. And as even Gabe points out, no single victory or toppled leader exhausts their zeal. They are still coming at it with the zealousness that she could have helped snuff it. I don't know if she could have snuffed it out, but she could have stood up to it. Gay goes on. Yes, I made mistakes. In my initial response to the atrocities of October 7th, I should have stated more forcefully what all people of good conscience know. Hamas is a terrorist organization that seeks to eradicate the Jewish state. And at a congressional hearing last month, I fell into a well-laid trap. She calls it what it was. I neglected to clearly articulate that calls for the genocide of Jewish people are abhorrent and unacceptable, and that I would use every tool at my disposal to protect students from that kind of hate. If only she were that clear. If she wouldn't have even needed an ounce more passion. But that last statement was better than saying, well, it depends on the context. No, it does not depend on the context. Well, hindsight, right? All right, she said it in the op-ed. To continue. Most recently, the attacks have focused on my scholarship. My critics found instances in my academic writings where some material duplicated other scholars' language without proper attribution. I believe all scholars deserve full and appropriate credit for their work. If not pay, you know that they would like better pay. Look, you can misquote me or you can not quote me, not cite me. Just give me more money. Give me the rights to your book. No, scholarship depends on citation, proper citation. When I learned of these errors, I promptly requested corrections from the journals in which the flagged articles were published, consistent with how I have seen similar faculty cases handled at Harvard. I mean, this is the thing. You know that the researchers, the Oppo researchers, have the software. They're going to go over every single bit of copy that she put out and see if there was some kind of link, some kind of DNA to something that was not cited, and they came out with close to 50. What built up to 50 instances this week. And that's when the letter came out that Gay wrote to the community. But here she's saying, here's her excuse. She says, I have never misrepresented my research findings, nor have I ever claimed credit for the research of others. Moreover, the citation error should not obscure a fundamental truth. I proudly stand by my work and its impact on the field. You see, I believe her. But if she believes what she wrote there, why resign? I still don't get to the idea that, and because of that, I had to resign. I mean, in this op-ed, she doesn't get to the institution is bigger than one person, and I'm going to fall on my sword for Harvard, for dear Harvard. Let's see. We'll go on. Despite the obsessive scrutiny of my peer-reviewed writings, few have commented on the substance of my scholarship, which focuses on the significance of minority office holding in American politics. My research marshaled concrete evidence to show that when historically marginalized community gain a meaningful voice in the halls of power, it signals an open door where before many saw only barriers, and that in turn strengthens our democracy. Well, it's true. It's true. You know, we all want inclusion, or to be included at the table, the halls of power. I mean, that's why when I went to Harvard back in October for this Asian American alumni summit, very pleased to see Michelle Wu, the mayor of Boston, to see her talk about, you know, what she's doing to make sure that historically marginalized communities have a meaningful voice in the halls of power. Throughout this work, I asked questions that had not been asked, used then cutting-edge quantitative research methods, and established a new understanding of representation in American politics. This work was published in the nation's top political science journals and spawned important research by other scholars. Never did I imagine needing to defend decades-old and broadly respected research, but the past several weeks have laid waste to truth. Those who had relentlessly campaigned to oust me since the fall, often trafficked in lies and ad hominem insults, not reasoned argument. They recycled tired racial stereotypes about Black talent and temperament. They pushed a false narrative of indifference and incompetence. Stereotypes, false narratives. She's right. It is not lost on me that I make an ideal canvas for projecting every anxiety about the generational and demographic changes unfolding on American campuses. A Black woman selected to lead a storied institution. Exactly. She was a first. The first Black, the second woman. She did not come from public schools, but was brought up in prep school, private school. I mean, this was her world. Someone who views diversity as a source of institutional strength and dynamism. Someone who has advocated a modern curriculum that spans from the frontier of quantum science to the long neglected history of Asian Americans. And hallelujah to that. You know, one of the things about Claudine Gay is she hired some of the first Asian American professors. But one thing that bothered me a little bit about that, why did it take so long for Harvard to have an established Asian American Studies program? Because it waited for $40 million to come from an Asian American alum. That's why. Should it have? I mean, it has the money. But an aside, the point is, it takes someone like Claudine Gay to recognize there are issues, there are problems at the university. Thank goodness. To study Asian American history, back when I went there, I had to go to a general Asia class, make the case that Asians to America was part of the Asian history and American history, and then find a graduate student who is willing to take me on in a section and lead me through my studies. Because this was a big lecture course taught by the big guns in Asian history, not Asian American history. And back then it was courses given by Edwin Reischauer, John Fairbank, scholars and diplomats, Asian Americans in the 70s. I'm not sure they knew what a Filipino was. Oh, when you count the colonization that was spearheaded by many a Harvardian policy-wise, this is a lot to rectify. That's why Claudine Gay really was an ideal person. She goes on, someone who believes that a daughter of Haitian immigrants has something to offer to the nation's oldest university. Yeah, I still believe that, she says. As I return to teaching and scholarship, I will continue to champion access and opportunity, and I will bring to my work the virtue I discussed in the speech I delivered at my presidential inauguration. Courage. Because it is courage that has buoyed me throughout my career, and it is courage that is needed to stand up to those who seek to undermine what makes universities unique in American life. See, I wish she had dedicated a little more courage in this instance when they were calling her name and they were going after her. But she didn't. Having now seen how quickly the truth can become a casualty amid controversy, I'd urge a broader caution. At tense moments, every one of us must be more skeptical than ever of the loudest and most extreme voices in our culture, however well organized or well connected they might be. Too often they are pursuing self-serving agendas that should be met with more questions and less credulity. College campuses in our country must remain places where students can learn, share, and grow together, not spaces where proxy battles and political grandstanding take root. Universities must remain independent venues where courage and reason unite to advance truth, no matter what forces set against them. See, how can you go against that? The people who were most vigorously against Claudine Gay thought that, it's a one-sided conversation at the universities. All left, no right. But that's wrong. That's false. I mean, it's far more diverse than people think. But what I would have liked to see from Claudine Gay is that she just stand up and stand behind these words. Have that courage to stand up and say, yes, this is what we're doing at Harvard. And we're going to fight back against all the false narratives and all the propaganda. We're going to give you the truth. She had that opportunity. And now it's unclear what's going to happen. Because I understand she's going back to her faculty position, but as a former president, she still has a role on the corporate board. And according to reports, she's still going to get a large salary that she got when she was president, or near that. Maybe she'll get more. I'm not in HR, but Claudine Gay in this op-ed, without naming names, because if you read the news, you know who they are, the right wing. They went after her scholarship, put it through the software, said, here, Here's an instance of plagiarism. Some people who were fellow scholars said, oh, small potatoes, not meaningful. They found one or two conservative folks who sided with the researchers saying, hey, this is fireable offense. And then, of course, you had students who said the honor code is such at Harvard that students would have been dealt with harshly. And so maybe this is a kind of wake-up call to make sure that there is some fairness. I mean, I hear students who say, hey, look, if the president gets away with this, and some people are writing in the Crimson saying the President Gay, got away far lightly than a student in the same situation would have. Maybe we need to rethink that. Because just as Gay was given the opportunity to provide the citations on these minor, seen as relatively minor citation errors, maybe people were too harsh on students. It wouldn't be would it be a compromise of the honor code? Or would it be just more compassionate and more forgiving? Because some people see the honor code as this is zero tolerance, We catch something, you're out the door. There's no they're tight. The same standard could have applied to Gay, but is it the same? Or is it different when you're dealing with the president? You might say, come on, Emil. You believe in no man is above the law? Or no Harvard president is above the law? But once again, it's a private university. I wonder if there will be some revisions to the honor code. Because that is one of the things that remains. That, okay, well, maybe Claudine Gay was bullied, but how do you address these plagiarism charges, and how do you make sure that it's not, that it's not a contradiction with what happens to students? And then, because then you see students, I think to some degree, some students are happy to see her go. But I know many students who aren't. I know former students who aren't. Anyway, that was Claudine Gay's, her op-ed. What just happened at Harvard is bigger than me. I wish she would have said something like, to other universities, stand tall. Say, this is why she's telling people to have courage, but she did not have the courage to fight. She would not fight. As she said in her letter to Harvard, she said, it is with a heavy heart, but a deep love for Harvard that I write to share that I will be stepping down. She says, after consultation with members of the corporation, it has become clear that it is in the best interest of Harvard for me to resign. I don't see why. In the best interest of Harvard, if they want to push diversity, inclusion, and equity, it would have been in the best interest of Harvard for you to stay. But she writes in her letter to the community, she says, I'm resigning so that our community can navigate the moment, or this moment of extraordinary challenge, with a focus on the institution rather than any individual. Well, that's very, what's the word? Humbling. or it's a humble stance. The institution is bigger than my ego, than any one individual. No, but you're a symbol, Claudine Gay. First black president, second woman. You represented so much to people, both current students and alums, of seeing a Harvard that looks like them, of seeing a Harvard that reflects that diversity, which is America. I mean, Harvard should look like a 21st century America, not a 17th century America. I mean, that was the point. And you're a first. I just wish, as she stated in her op-ed, that she had a little more courage to put it all on the line and say, come and get me. Come and get me. I'm Claudine Gay. I'm going to use my elbows and I'm standing my ground for DEI, not just at Harvard, but throughout the country. I wish Claudine Gay had done that. And now, look, the interim, as I've said, is someone who I've met and who actually knows me. Alan Garber. And I saw him in October when he gave his speech at the Asian Alumni Gathering. And he was on his way out after giving the speech, but he was very kind. We're both in the G's in the alumni book. So I guess because I had a long passage, almost as long as his, he must have read mine in the G's, and that's how he knew me. I don't know. Maybe we share a lot of things. I mean, we were both in the same incoming class, but we graduated early. Of course, he graduated early so he can get his economics MA. And I graduated early so I could become a disc jockey in Houston. So, I mean, totally different. And then, as if economics was enough, or wasn't enough, he said, I think I'm going to become a doctor, too. I mean, that's, he was apparently in the running to be president at Harvard. Like when they selected Rudenstein, and I think he would have made a great president. Anyway, I've sent him a note saying congratulations. Let's see if he responds back. Anyway, this is not going to go away because President Gay is going to stay on the corporate board. What kind of say will she have? The same amount as before last week? And then this suddenly is like a suspension with pay, in a way, as opposed to a suspension without pay, which is kind of punitive. But we have not heard the last of the Claudine Gay story, mostly because we'll be looking to see what she does next as a member of the board, and we'll be looking for what Harvard does next in terms of the next president, in terms of stabilizing the board, in terms of what does the board do now in terms of DEI efforts. And how do other schools look at Harvard and say, oh, Harvard did this, and I guess we could just dump our DEI program because, we don't want to tangle with those right-wing propagandists. That's where this is hurtful. That's where Harvard could have led, but they didn't. Could have led. They didn't. So we'll see if other schools follow suit and say, that's it. We're no more DEI. Already some schools have dismantled DEI efforts. They have. They shouldn't have, but I think some had to because of some state laws. But this is the second swipe. The first swipe was affirmative action. This is the second swipe. And it is, make no mistake, a part of a new anti-civil rights movement in America. That's why it's important. Gay didn't say that. But that's what it is. It's the start of a new anti-civil rights movement in America. It's not, Gay's hire was not civil rights run amok. Gay's hire was the next step for civil rights at an institution like Harvard. Her resignation was anti-civil rights gone amok. Because they bullied Harvard, they bullied her, and Harvard and Gay did not fight back. But those of us who believe in civil rights will have to carry on. Just like the Supreme Court ruling getting rid of affirmative action did not end the fight for diversity, equity, and inclusion. It didn't. Fight continues. And each and every election, it becomes an issue, whether we acknowledge it or not. You ask people, what's the most important issue in the campaign or in this election? People will talk about the economy. They'll talk about healthcare. They'll talk about immigration now, the southern border. They won't talk about education, affirmative action, race. They won't talk about that. They'll talk about law and order, even though crime is down. The crime stats have gone down. But they should be talking about race and about the attempt of right-wing advocates to undo the civil rights of the last more than 50 years, the last, nearly 60 years. If you count 64 Civil Rights Act, 65 Voting Rights Act, nearly 50 years. Or is it more than 50? It's time. Some people are trying to undo that. Most notably, the front runner of the Republican Party. Which is why if you read my column on this whole gay episode, you see how I view it and the moral questions involved. Go to ALDEF, aaldef.org/blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, aldef.org/blog. Also see the column on journalism, Richard Prince's BIPOC Journalism Review. Also see it on diverse issues in higher education. All right, that's it for me today. Claudine Gay. Oh, there's been like I said, there's a number of takes on the Claudine Gay story, and Ross doubted. His headline is, the university couldn't save both Gay and itself, so they sacrificed Gay. I disagree. They could have saved both Gay and itself. But that's the point. That's what the point is with Gay's op-ed. She said, and her thinking, this is bigger than me. It's bigger than myself, bigger than one individual. It's the institution. She chose to save the institution. And here, Ross Douthat, underneath Gay's op-ed, writes, the university couldn't save both Gay and itself. It could have. Don't for a second believe, although it could have. The institution. Now, a lot of people are saying the next president of Harvard better be black. The next president of Harvard better be a black woman. I don't know. That's another question. Another question that comes up. They had a black woman. They could have stood up with her, stood behind her. What are they saying? We want the right kind, not the wrong kind. Can we find like a scholar who has Oprah kind of instincts? I'm telling you, Harvard wanted it both ways. And this op-ed writer, Ross Douthat, said Harvard couldn't save both Gay and so it could have. It very much could have. Like I said, they could have stood tall, stood the ground, said, we got a $60 billion endowment. We're a private institution. We can do whatever we want in the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It didn't have the courage to do that. Protected the brand. And that's what happens when you have hedge fund runners saying, who serve on the corporate board, when they're making the decisions and they're influencing the people, you're going to get that. By the way, the other big story of the day was the release of those Epstein documents, or the unredacted Epstein documents. The conservative media is so rabid about that, about embarrassing Democrats, the left, although I don't think they're the left if you're hanging out with Epstein. Albeit Alan Dershowitz, who is now a member of the right, his name is prominently mentioned in the case. Maybe not in the documents that were unredacted yesterday. And he was, Dershowitz, the former Harvard law professor, he was against Gay. He called her a DEI hire. But I saw this in a right-wing publication I won't mention. They made a big deal about one of the names in the Epstein files was Thomas Pritzker of Hyatt Hotel fame. Billionaire, multi-billionaire. His sister Penny is on the corporate board. And so what kind of misleading headline did they use? Because everything has to connect with Claudine Gay. They said, Claudine Gay's connection to Epstein papers. Oh, it's Penny Pritzker is on the board of is the chair of the Harvard corporate board. Her brother was in the Epstein papers, and that's a connection. Wow. That is a stretch. I've been known for stretching. People have called me a stretcher, but that is a right-wing stretch. And comical, really. Anyway, I still support Claudine Gay. And as I say in my ALDEF column, Claudine Gay, for Harvard, Claudine Gay was not the DEI hill to die on, but it should have been. Check it out on the ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog. And you can also come back, and if you missed any or all of this catch this on YouTube at Emil Amok1, on Facebook, fb.com/EmilGuillermo.media. Also on Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter, at Emil Amok, EMILAMOK. All right, that's it for our takeout. My takes on all things considerable. We're here Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, live at least, most times. Oh, tomorrow we'll be back again because I'll have Dan Gonzalez, Professor Dan Gonzalez, join me. We love to talk about Claudine Gay. I like to close these things with a little meditation. And so, loving kindness, that's what it is. A little loving kindness. Self-love. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Mahal Kita.